Well, what's going on in this endless debate between religion and secularity? It's ignoring the third way. I'm not referring to Buddhism now, but something that's greater than that, which we're really in the 21st century, which is what I'll call spiritual life. It doesn't ignore the possibilities of the supernatural, but doesn't particularly totally embrace the thesis that the material is going to meet our needs entirely at all. And there's something that's more along the line of the psychological or mental, that what we're living in is in a world where we're concerned for our happiness and well-being. And we want to know what engenders that, what helps us live a life that's worthwhile, peaceful, joyful, good in the way that we at present understand goodness. We don't want to live in poverty and squalor. We don't need to live in absurd trillionaire affluence. That's not necessarily going to meet our needs either. We value friendships and relationships. We value life. Whereas I say here now, we are pro-life in a very specifically 21st century dawning. You could say the age of Aquarius, but that's got a bad name already. I think what I mean is, well, a bit like my mum saying, there's more things in heaven and earth than you or I have ever dreamed. And a loaf of bread, a jug of wine, a book of verse, which probably means guidance in some way, underneath the bough, and thou beside me singing in the wilderness. Wilderness art paradise now. That we do seek love and communion, and yes, we would like there to be a superpower which we could call God, except it would call up all sorts of religious connotations that are not appropriate, we feel now. But it would be good if God were all-powerful and all-loving, and truly so, in the way that matches whatever our values are at present. What are the rules for being nearer this which we value? Life. Happiness, quite simple. Fulfillment, contentment, peace and joy, hope, trust in each other, and integrity. openness, honesty, yes, a freedom to do that which we want, but a concern for others that we don't impose harmfully on them. What is the way ahead, values-wise? What should our ethics truly be? And I think we all, in our way, are attempting to move in that direction, but don't necessarily value what other people feel they are doing in this respect, because they have different answers to ourselves. And so we want a rule book that's going to somehow harmonize discordant views, and we don't know what that is. But we do know what we want. We want life, fullness of life. It is ambiguous according to what the values are of the beholder. The glasses that you or I are wearing makes a difference to how we see it. And that depends on our background, which collectively is quite chaotic. The very problem we're trying to wrestle with. Let me pause. Is there no certain answer then? Correct. We have to embrace uncertainty, like it or not. What's the best way of handling uncertainty? With some measure of caution in what we advise and leap into. But not a total inertia, of course. That's not very helpful either. We can become clearer on what we personally value, and clearer as to the consequences that will have on those around us, and therefore the feedback onto us as well. We can stop wasting our time with this debate between religion and secularity. It's the 20th century has-been occupation that got us nowhere. Is it not as satisfying as the rigorous and strict religious priest come guru type approach to life? Well, it wasn't satisfying at all, and it seems to have meant the immiseration of huge masses of the population of the world. Was that better than the more primitive religions of the past? Not sure, really. It's on such a tremendous scale now internationally that any thoughts are overwhelmingly big, in consequence. We're in I was going to say an individualism, but a century more of isolation than individualism. Sounds a bit of a contradiction to our amazing communication skills we have these days, both technologically and articulation-wise of our ideas. We are, in a sense, very educated and very technical and very competent and very isolated. We meet with people less and with machines more, and devices and so on. We are communing with our creation rather than with our people. And I think at heart we're uneasy about what consequences this may have. Very uneasy. And it's a hard adjustment to become so inclined to this change, which seems to be upon us in some measure against our will. It's a sort of consequence of the way our system is going, our economy, our politics, and our culture or decline of such. It's not clear. We're at a loss as to what's for the best, which is surprising because in many ways we've become so competent and understanding and analytical, not just about our technologies and so on, our sciences, but our social sciences too. We feel we've got a handle on what our culture and society is about, but not enough to know what to do for the best. Only with dogmatic deliberation, which looks hazardous, to say the least. In short, I'm back to my original obsession, which is uncertainty laces everything. And it's just as true in the 21st century. The uncertainty in some sense has been heightened in that we're in a material and technological world that we're trying to adjust to. It's not something we are at all clear we want to avoid, but we know it's presenting uncertainties that we may not be able to cope with, and that's very disturbing. We can turn a blind eye to it and become part of the mass consumer society that the 20th century tried to engineer. But it doesn't look as though it's an option for the whole planet anyway. And those that are so-called privileged with it don't seem to be so greatly benefited by it as we had hoped, only in a material sense. And we find that we're not material. We're spiritual. Or if you like, psychological, mental. We certainly are mental. Now, let me not drop that one in. Psychological. And it's the psychology of things that's troubling us, especially the isolation. That our communing with each other is via device, and that somehow is reducing our humanity in some ways, which is disturbing. In fact, it's almost unnerving at times. Being less technical and analytical, a problem for our society, for a vast number of people, is loneliness. Not truly relating, not truly having lasting friendships and relationships with other people. A loss of life while still living. We objectivize it and see it in other societies. We think of life under communism from a capitalist viewpoint as drone-like, zombie-like, peasant-like, with a 21st century gloss of materialism, perhaps if you're lucky, on top of it. or a gloss of materialist hope. To be as the billionaires are supposed to be, but in fact are not. You know, they're supposed to be so happy that they're so wealthy, and they're not so happy. They seem to be as concerned and worried and stressed and put upon as anyone else in the society. And they feel they're a victim and oppressed by systems that are handicapping their freedom to live and express their wealth as they wish. You may think this is a very enviable position to be in compared to the drone-like life that seems to be presented to you. But their expressed happiness seems to be to the contrary, although their projected persona and advertising PR work tries to say the contrary. Do you envy the wealthy? You know, it was the 1929 thing, wasn't it? Do you envy the wealthy stockbroker who is ruined? He's only worth half the fortune he was yesterday, and jumps from the tower window and lands on the poor peasant selling newspapers in the street. Perhaps the person he didn't land on is better off than the chap who just landed. Life has some amazing lessons, I think, to teach us. I wonder what they are. And so I'm getting some measure of practicality in running two series of recordings. One, the jon17 series, now as it's called, and the other, the political economy series. And trying to find some sanity by running the two together. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.